With Aquarius seeming like she's hinting towards like sticking around for a while, I have the large question of just how long she's going to be present for. Because the weird thing right now about Elentier, like not only the fact that Lucy can just summon her spirits, like they don't even need keys, and it doesn't even look like she has to do it by will. There's just like Lucy existing there is like a doorway that they can just kind of appear through. Like there's just no key required. She doesn't need a something to use as a conduit. She's just got the magic. But also the fact that I forgot to mention, like in my theory video, what was going on with Gray, because I was mentioning like if he has to go against Juvia, but it's because with Celine can bring over any character at any time. If she feels like it, she can just go open a portal, grab somebody, and bring them over to Elentier. And that's one of the very strange things about this arc that kind of comes into play, because no character can just show up. We can't have, Laxus or Jalal or any character just appear unless Celine does something about it. Or when we get to the Dragon Eaters of how exactly they get over here, maybe a character ends up following them, like for some reason, like, oh, Jalal goes to investigates Diablos and then following him to the portal, Laxus tagged along, or something, just like Celine just feels like for whatever reason bringing them over. Like there are like story stuff we don't know yet that could exist, because like as far as we know, there has to be something that the Diablos members are going to like use to get over to Elentier, because otherwise, like, what would be the point of even hinting their characters coming to get Celine? Why wouldn't it just be like Sedum de Viernes or something? But outside of that, like, we get to the actual chapter itself. I was really hoping we would see something for Natsu, like leaving and going to set up another fight, because I do think Natsu versus Urza is gonna happen, but we'll see. Maybe it'll be a group fight against Yokai Urza. They'll get back Wendy and Gray or something, and then it'll all be them against Urza. I like the idea of it being Natsu versus Urza, because we could get a very serious, like, by, every single scrap of power between like Urza, like a Yokai Urza and Natsu. And because I do think that Yokai Urza, just given what we saw with Lucy, Yokai Urza should be at least like push Natsu's Fire Dragon King mode to the brink. I don't think he should have to go Dragon Force. I feel like Dragon Force should be saved specifically for big boss characters. And though Urza is already really powerful, the Yokai power on top of it, which should make her considerably stronger, but I don't think it should rise to the level of threat that Natsu goes Dragon Force. We'll see, though. Maybe Urza with the Yokai power will be even stronger than my current like predictions of it, because I'm not taking into account like whatever her Elentier buff is, whatever is advanced about her magic. I think it'll just be, spiritual power clad on top of her with the Yokai boost. I don't think it'll have anything to do with Urza's advanced magic, because Lucy's has been shown, but she didn't do it intentionally, so it's not like the characters just know it already. That's one of the things I'm going to talk about when we get to Gray at the end of the chapter. But Aquarius showing up, there's a question I have about that exactly, because it could explain two things. One, there's the fact that that we're reminded of the fact that Lucy's spirits, when she summons them, are scaled up to her level of magic, because she's applying a portion of her magic to bring them in. So it's like she's taking a quantity of her magic, maybe, and like putting it into them as they summon. Like, in the process of summoning, they just absorbed whatever amount of magic she puts in, and there they are. So if that's the case, it would make sense of why Aquarius is so strong in this chapter. She's able to go against the Yokai Lucy, and Natsu is able to get a little bit washed from it. Like, it's done more of a funnier sense, but if she's able to mess with the Snake Lucy at all, then she should be at least somewhere contendable with base Natsu. Because Snake Lucy was stronger than base Natsu, but we do know that from Aquarius that Lightning Flame Dragon mode Natsu would be too much for her. So she's just should be right at the cusp of where, like, base Natsu sits at. But there's also the possibility, because she says that she doesn't need a contract to be over here. I don't think that's true, because my guess, at least, this is again what I said in theory, is that Lucy's been able to use her Aquarius dress with the broken key, because maybe she still has the contract with Aquarius. Like, maybe Aquarius will keep the contract until somebody finds her key and wants to form a contract with them. Like, she'll want to hold on to being connected to Lucy as long as possible. Because that was always, to me, what would make sense about her being able to use the Star Dress while not being able to use it in its full ability of obviously summon Aquarius. But it would also make sense of why Aquarius could come over the same way that Taurus did when Lucy's being attacked. Like, they just know she's being attacked, they can summon themselves and then come to her aid. But if she's telling the truth, that she doesn't need a contract and she's not contracted to Lucy, then this has to be Aquarius's level of power by itself buffed in Daedalus. Not Aquarius summoned by Lucy, not Aquarius summoned by Karen, or any other summoner. This is just Aquarius how she was. And granted, like I said, they are getting all, like, magic in general, just being an Elentier, is advanced, it's more powerful. We don't know the extent for all of the main cast, but there should be just, the general boost that people get. So Aquarius being stronger than even her normal self is still fine. It would be really weird if Aquarius was as strong as, like, base Natsu regularly. So I think it makes way more sense if she is still contracted to Lucy. She just doesn't want to say it because, we know that she's hard on Lucy, but she does like her. And it's kind of like when she had to break her key in Tartarus. She was a little bit, like, aggressive to Lucy, just trying to get her to do it because she knows that she would have to in order to convince Lucy to go through with it. So I think it makes sense if she's lying about, like, oh, I don't need a contract. I think she's still contracted to Lucy. We'll see how that's exactly revealed, because I think that is something that is important to note, because it's like, is she just this powerful in Elentier? Then how powerful is she by herself? I guess if, like, you had each of the, like, if you had them in their original states, like, not through summoning, and they're maybe, like, closer to Wizard Saint level, because also, like, they would get stronger naturally from going into Earthland, because we know that the Ether Nano was more potent over the 7 years. It's kind of a weird thing, because it's left in a little bit the dark, but there's some theory around it. But at the same time, it's like, we don't know how old the celestial spirits are. And we're really looking at it from the standpoint of, like, what we know in the series, but, like, it's kind of like how the Celestial Spirit King knows secrets probably we've never even heard of in the series, because he would have seen it all happen throughout recorded history, and they have stellar memory and everything. But also, like, their age in general, they don't age. Like, Aquarius has looked the same since Lucy was born, even since before then. And I would imagine they've looked the same as, like, when Layla had them. Because, similar to, like, with the Aetherius, they're just, like, they're not human, they're not even really, like, organic, like, I would assume kind of organic creatures. I'm still wondering if somebody created the celestial spirits, or if they just have always existed, or what their origin story is for them in general. Because they're really left in the dark of where they come from. Because, like, we know the Aetherius were born from Zareth. We know, like, Diablos has to connect to dragons. Like, we knew that just from the idea of not even them of being dragon slayers, but, like, eating dragons. We know they had to originate from that somehow, so we know that's in their backstory. But we don't really know anything about the celestial spirits where they came from. We know aspects of them. I'm a little shaky on the celestial or the eclipse arc, just because I've only seen that, I think, once or twice. I gotta rewatch it. Like, I skimmed it not that long ago, but I do want to rewatch it, because it is more interesting than I remember the last time I watched it, like, just the general, like, twist at the end. But it's similar to Gildarts. Like, we don't know anything about Gildarts' backstory at all. Like, at all. Like, we know more about Ivan's backstory than we know about Gildarts' backstory. But when it comes to celestial spirits, they're still, again, very much, a question mark on their general origin. Because if they're just always like this, then have they always existed? Like I said, like, how far back does their existence go? Were they created by some other powerful being? Are they connected to the gods somehow? Who knows? But Aquarius decides, she's going up to get Snake Lucy. I like when she's just, like, talking, or just her general, the general way she does, because the level of mind control that it's been shown, that I assume Ferris got from Celine or someone's, like, maybe from Yoko, because when Celine, like, cut, like, power to her, like, it seemed that she couldn't use it anymore, because she said it was Celine's doing, and this, Celine's crew is also doing this mind control thing, and when it stopped working for For Ferris, she said it was because of Selene. So I'm guessing that power originates from Selene. And they all acted like themselves, was like somewhat. It was more of like that you've taken like if you had a chart of them and it just had said like alignment, and you just erased Fairy Tale and you put you put Ferris, or in this case you put Selene. And for the most part, like everything else about them is the same. Like, granted, the yokai are like a little bit more altered. It looks like Selene has done more in the minds of of the main cast, so right here, than what Ferris did. Ferris just kind of took control of them and made them on her side. It is very clear, though, that Selene did mess with their personalities a little bit, mess with their minds. So I think hers is just more of a lot more detailed level of mind control, but they still have aspects about them, which I think is just very interesting. But Aquarius is talking to them, and she's like, it's like, why are you dressed up that? You trying to seduce the guy? And I think she knows that, there's a little bit of a problem with Lucy, because that would have bothered Lucy if, even in the idea she's fine with, like, being the snake form, just, we know how Aquarius is to Lucy and how they how they interact in general. We have a ton of experience with them, obviously, like, the first ones that we really see in this series. Because Aquarius was, used in chapter 1, and we see them all back here again. Lucy getting, splashed up by Aquarius, but this time it's, like, good. There's, like, a couple hard smacks in there, and she's just, like, slapping the shit out of Lucy, just wailing on her, and then she goes in for, like, embrace her and try and talk to her. And here's the thing that I don't get. When it came to people, like, I was watching on, like, Twitter and stuff as, the spoilers were coming out, as we were looking at the Raws, but people are bringing up, like, oh, of course they solve it with, like, a more of an emotional thing. And here's the thing. One, it's a side plot. This is a side plot. This isn't, like, a big major opponent. This is the opening where it's going to be more of displays. It's more on displays. This the overall idea of what we're seeing right now is what Selene and her crew find funny. And even if, like, we get, like, the last chapter where it was, like, we're looking at from a lot of the action standpoint of, like, Natsu and Lucy, and then, with Greg and, the happy Carlet and Wendy was, like, doing all, like, extra little cute cat stuff, and then, like, here, you have, like, an emotional scene, but you have to keep in mind, from the perspective of Natsu and Greg, it'd be freaky if your friends are now turned into monsters and trying to kill you. It would mess with your head a bit. And Selene likes that. Selene is, like, trying to mess with, the kind of core structure of their group. And I'm curious to know if that's going to play out further. Like, if she's going to try and find something more kind of, like minuscule to tweak with that might maybe mess with them on a more emotional. Like, maybe after this, she does something with the ships, because if she didn't go get Juvia, then I think with Natsu and Lucy, like, it was more of just, like, the one-on-one thing, or it's a coincidence. Because I thought the idea of, like, she was putting not Lucy in front of Natsu, she was messing, like, with the ships. Maybe she knows, because her, like, the only thing about Selene and what she's done, shown is she definitely is going to be the most, like, intelligent out of the dragon gods. Unless Viernes is, like, some form of, like, super genius dragon, I'm gonna guess it's Selene, because we've seen 4 out of the 5, and Selene is definitely the more tactical, kind of, like, toying with people, puppet master, like, vibe to her. But with Lucy and Aquarius, I did really like their interaction. I really liked how they were kind of going about things. But like I said, it was not only a side plot, and again, like, this isn't gonna be, like, a big thing, and I'll go more into why it's very clear a side plot in both what's going on, but also how it should be viewed. When I get to Gray. But Selene even says that that it was, like, a cliche thing going on. Like, it reminds me of when people bring up, like, Jalal looking like Sieghart, or Justice and Elsie looking like Jalal and Urza. Like, when they say it out, like, oh, he's lazy, he's not making new designs, but then you look at all the other designs, that he's got a ton of new designs in the series, but he's doing certain ones in, like, as a flip, like, kind of like a mirror version of them, but altered in some way. He's doing it on purpose. He's been doing that with, the whole Imarks guy. It's like, he's Sieghart, Jalal, Justice, Genesis. that like Seacard isn't the original. It goes back to Hiromishima's original main character. He did the Magician, the one shot before Wraith Master. He had different hair. It was white and it was kind of like in a ponytail look, but he had that eye tattoo. So clearly he was bringing something over from his initial MC into the series when Rave Master got serialized. It's also kind of like when he was making Rave Master, when it went from Magician to Rave Master, he was going to have her originally be an alchemist, but he's like that type of, like, the way he fights would be a little too brutal. But then he took this idea similar to what he had and gave it to Musica and gave him a silver claimer, manipulating metal. Actually, I think that was what it was. It wasn't alchemy. I think it was he was a metal manipulator. If I remember correctly. I might be wrong on that. I couldn't remember entirely, or both. I'd have to go back and look. Either way, though, it's like he's doing this on purpose. We're getting a very nice, emotional, feel-good chapter between Aquarius and Lucy on purpose. This is what he's doing. This whole chapter is so the people that actually enjoy fairy tale and don't just kind of read it for no reason can get our nice nostalgia of Lucy and Aquarius together again. You remember back to the Tartarus arc when she had to break the key in order to summon the Celestial Spirit King and save the guild. We remember even from Alvarez when she showed up and helped kind of settle the issue between Brandish and Lucy. And of course, in chapter 1, when Lucy, summons Aquarius washes the boat on shore, and that's how Natsu is able to fight against Bora and his goons, because Lucy was able to be helpful and get the boat out of the water, so Natsu didn't get motion sickness. Aquarius goes very far back, obviously, in the story, and she's actually even further than that, because it's not the same character, but if you read, anybody who's read the Fairy Tale one-shot, which is actually spelled like the way that everyone for some reason thinks it's spelled, Tale, that I think it was the Queen of the Water People was pretty much Aquarius. So, like, she's a very, very long staple character in the series. This is one of the reasons why it was so rough when we lost Ultir. It's because Ultir was the first character we saw in the manga. She was the first character on page when we saw her breaking her magic orb, her Lacrima ball, and we got her, and then we saw Sea Glean, obviously that being Jalal. I almost always trip up on that one. There's like a couple things in there just because I know who he is, and it's like, but it's like a alias of his that it's a separate form that looks the same on purpose. That's one of those ones that always almost gets me. But when it comes to later in the chapter, you have Aquarius is using water. You have Snake who's like water doesn't do anything to me, and then obviously that's when it goes to the hand slaps. But then she's bring up that her water. It's like it's water from her memories, all the times that she's experienced Aquarius's water and whatnot. And you see all these flashbacks from not just the ones where it's Kid Lucy and stuff, but it's ones we see in there. And I really like when they use the actual panels in their flashback, because it is one of those things that I do miss, and I was always really happy when Heroes was coming out and seeing the Fairy Tail gang in Mishima's art style, and so seeing the flashback in Mishima's art style, especially in so many panels, the progression of Mishima's art from chapter 1 all the way to Alvarez, it just looks really nice. I was very happy about that, but it was a very nice moment. Lucy obviously being very happy to see Aquarius again. She's just crying, and it's still the Snake Lucy, but it's Lucy's side kind of pops in, and she's just trying to, get herself together. But at the end, she's, tells her to go back to normal. Slaps. She mentions at the start that she used to spank Lucy when she was bad, and then she would end up doing it again in this chapter right before Lucy turns back. I thought that was pretty funny. The thing, though, that I was interested in is not the spanking itself. I know a lot of people are going to make jokes or... Man, there's going to be a lot of horny tweets about it. But the thing that I thought was the most interesting, because you see a bunch of characters' reactions, and a lot of people would probably have those, and, the more astonished, I can't believe she did that reaction, but Celine was entertained by it. She seemed okay with it, but she liked, what she was seeing. She's like, that was, I think Celine felt like the chapter was supposed to be. It was like a feel-good chapter, and she enjoyed that about it. She even says afterwards that that emotions sometimes can surpass magic and witchcraft, talking about spiritual arts and stuff. I thought that was, very, very much true to the idea of, an emotional shock can overcome something. And it's not even the first time that's happened in fairy tales. I remember Atlas Flame. Atlas Flame was shocked back in his senses by, what Natsu reminding him of Igneel. And so, again, it's like, why are people getting upset with this? Like, it's not like this was a villain suddenly Aquarius hugged and then turned back. It was like Lucy was being mind controlled in a game that Celine, was doing. The thing though that was also really interesting is that Yoko also I forgot to mention when they were talking about Aquarius and they were saying like, oh, is that a yokai? She specifically says that's not a yokai. So yokai and spirits are for sure a completely separate race. I was very curious of like if yokai somehow may be connected to the spirit somehow, but she's just acknowledging that they're different, and it makes me wonder like what the full gap of what yokai and celestial spirits were, because again, with celestial spirits are still in the dark. Like we could have had like, oh well, maybe in the celestial spirit world, like yokai are like weird little critters that go around, doing whatever mischief they have in that world or something. I don't really know. It was more of me just wondering like, oh, are these summoning styles connected? But when Lucy starts to break free of what Yoko had done to her, Yoko starts to get upset. Like she's like a little shocked, and while the other characters are like all right with it, like Celine's like, oh well, that was nice. Like she even like comments on like the more like happier emotional side of it, which I liked. But Hakune and Mimi just were like, oh wow, that was something. Nothing too crazy. But when it starts out, Yoko is like, she's upset. She's like, that's not possible. It can't be. She's doing that whole villain thing. But it's done at first silly, and then it shows her like in a very serious panel of her, and then the next one it's done in like a cutesy setup where Mimi is like talking to her like, oh, it's it's just like physical attacks are just something different, and Yoko's like, that's not it. That's not that's not what the thing is. And then at the end, she's upset again. So I think a lot of people can look at that and see this summoner is now pissed off at this other summoner. So that's going to be probably Lucy's enemy at some point in this arc. I really am hoping that's going to be the case, because like I don't think Urza can get anything out of like fighting Yoko, because like once Urza surpasses Yoko, is just going to be her slicing down all of Yoko's spirits, or sorry, yokai. Whereas Lucy versus Yoko would be a battle of two summoners. And I still want to see Lucy rematch against Mimi, but I think her versus Yoko would be a much, much better match that a lot of people would really like to see. And then after that point, like maybe we can get some more villains, like more people in Celine's crew, or maybe like the other fights, like maybe Urza, instead of having a rematch against Yoko, will fight, we'll go against Suzaku or Kiria. I'm kind of hoping Suzaku is actually stronger than Urza, like by a considerable amount. I kind of am putting him like on the degree of like level with Laxus, where he's just like one step above Urza. So we'll see on that one, because if he's stronger than like Kiria, Scolia, and Admiral, he should be a good chunk above what they were. And it's not like Kiria or any of them are fodder. None of them are fodder. It's not like Kiria's fodder because she lost to Laxus. Laxus is just Laxus. I mean, that's like somebody losing to Gildars. It's just like, no. It's just, even thinking back to like when Acnologia beat God Serena. It's not God Serena was weak. It was Acnologia was just too much for him. Then at the end of the chapter, we have Bray going up against Happy and Carla, and it just freezes them. And Wendy just, it's like, oh, well, used against spirit power, ice is useless. And she's like, oh, sorry, does a little cat yawn. And the thing about that is, when I mentioned, I'm not going to go too much into it because I got to save some stuff for my prediction video because I want to talk about Gray. But when I mentioned that this is a side plot, it should be treated as a side plot. This is like the Hungry Wolf Knights during the Grand Magic Games. It's a small set of villains that pop up out of nowhere, and they were, for the most part, to show some stuff for our other characters. Like, we got stuff with, like, Lucy and Yukino. We saw what was going on, obviously, with, like, Wendy being able to cure status effects like she did against Cosmos. And that, like, Mira Jane being able to eat some toxins and poisons because she's a demon, and it doesn't affect her in her Satan soul. And I would assume, obviously, her other forms But then they like know Natsu's whole speech about going to war with anyone who starts a battle with Fairy Tail. Poor Panther Lily. Panther Lily kind of got a little bit screwed there just because his feat was like the least interesting because it was just like a big sword slash. But this whole setup is not supposed to be a big action battle. Like, this is Celine messing with them. And Lucy, like, we already saw Natsu go up against Snake Lucy. Base Natsu was not enough. He went Lightning Flame Dragon mode. We know from Aquarius that Lightning Flame Dragon mode would have been too much for Snake Lucy. Whereas, like, we got emotional part with Snake Lucy and Aquarius. I'm hoping Urza versus Natsu is going to be the actual big fight of this point, or it could be the whole group against Urza, and maybe it'll be more of a group against Urza instead of Natsu in a like big bloody battle. Because it'd also be fine if instead it's just like a badass fight instead of a or more of like a fun big group fight instead of like some bloody Natsu versus a fight. But I definitely think Natsu versus is the fight everyone would prefer. I would really like that. I think it'd be really cool to see open this arc with like a really serious battle. But Gray is the other point that I want to mention, because Gray is not in his Devil Slayer mode right now. He's not in his Devil Slayer form. So he's just using his normal Ice Make, and this next chapter, because I assume he's not going into his Devil Slayer form because he doesn't want to actually hurt them. He, just freezing them, he wants to stop them. These are two cats and Wendy, who is, like a little sister to him. He's not going to try and do anything too crazy. And he's a lot smarter than Natsu, so he doesn't have that Natsu just like, well, if I knock him out, like, that's still good. I'm not killing him. Gray doesn't want to hurt him seemingly at all. So I'm guessing in the next chapter, we're going to see whatever Gray's advancement in his magic is, which big fingers crossed on that. I'm fine with postponing Urza versus Natsu if it means Gray getting his own kind of like whatever is better about Gray. Can Gray make like static ice clones that look like him perfectly? I mean, he had something like that in Charters, but I mean, like, maybe like way crazier. Maybe they could use Ice Make. That'd be really cool. Bring back Ice Make Unlimited and do like an Ellen tier advanced version or something. I don't know. Like, there's a lot of what Gray can do because Gray's magic is very impressive, and Gray has always had like a very cool type of magic with his Ice Make, his Devil Slayer magic, just the fact he's making all these weapons and not just like moves, but he needs something new. I definitely think he needs something extra. I'm very curious to know what Mishima is going to do with it. Or I would be very much okay with it if it's not just base ice magic, if it's Devil Slaying, if he has like an advanced Devil Slayer form and maybe can do something to them. Maybe there's something that he can maybe unlock, whatever, like his bonus trait is, like, if Natsu can burn magic, maybe Gray can, I don't know, like, I don't know if it'd be like spiritual arts, but maybe he could freeze like an emotion, or has something kind of like, he copied Invil's Choice Kamui, so like, could he maybe use it and then make that ice lock and make them stop thinking? Maybe, I don't know, that'd be really cool to pop on a Gray, give him some hacks. But, well, give him some more eggs. He's already got some pretty solid stuff, but I mean, that would be a big bonus for him. But anyway, other than that, though, tell me your thoughts about this chapter. I really liked it. Like, the thing about it that I was really happy about was the general nostalgia vibes that it gave. I liked that even Mishima commented on, like, saying it was, like, what he was doing here wasn't, like, a cliche, but that was the point. It was supposed to be just this really nice, heart-touching chapter between Aquarius and Lucy, and then the setup with Yoko, I think, is very interesting. I like that Mishima's done that, because that's one of the things that a lot of people were first mentioning when Yoko was revealed, is like the idea of Lucy versus her, because you have two summoners. I think that'd be really sick. And then the stuff with Gray at the end, I'm very interested in. I really want to see what Gray does next chapter. I've been mentioning for a while, I really want to see Gray get some form of upgrade to his powers and to his magic. And we know that everybody in Ellen tier gets a bonus just from being there. So Gray, regardless of it, like, well, what is Gray's next thing he could create or unlock? It's like he has something right now. We just don't know yet. Maybe that's what we'll get from Natsu soon in the future. And then, I mean, Wendy's could just be like her level of raw enchantment. Or we could get some really cool new Dragon Slayer moves. I wouldn't complain about that. Anyway, other than that, though, I mean, one last thing for the people that got all the way to the end of this video. It's like a half hour in. But because a lot of people have been mentioning Carla and Happy's big tiger forms. What if Wendy is able to replicate that. It's like maybe Happy and Carla couldn't do that on their own, but Wendy could do some form of enchant on them and turn them into these. Like that could just be a Wendy, combo move to them. I think that would be really cool because it'd be, it'd be a way to kind of just give a little bit of bonus to Happy and Carla, but also improve Wendy at the same time, give her some form of upgrade. Anyway, other than that though, comment below. Tell me your thoughts about this chapter. Tell me your thoughts about like everything that's going on. My guess, like I said, when we get to the next portion, I'll go more into detail of what I'm hoping for. I'll think about like what exactly Gray could get for the prediction video when it comes out. But I'm looking forward to a Gray chapter. Like we haven't got anything for Gray when it comes to like combat for a bit. Like we've been very much focused on his character, like with Juvie and stuff, which I have genuinely really liked. But I do want to see Gray get something new to his, his moveset and his abilities, because everybody else is getting, but not Gray. If everybody else wasn't getting anything shiny and new, I'd be like, okay, I still want everyone to get stuff, but it's like Gray specifically hasn't got anything. So it's nice to know that there's something on the horizon. We just have to get there. But anyway, other than that, though, comment below, thumbs up the video, friend, like button, subscribe button, and check out my other videos. Further than that, I appreciate everybody's already subscribed, and I thank you all for listening. Bye.